chapter of the Divya, or one of you, can I ask you to poke that so I?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's the recapitulation of the teaching of the whole book. And Vyasa, our poet, in the mouth of Lord Krishna, is talking about these various principles through the lens of the three gunas. Gunas means the qualities of mind. If you're on Zoom, please mute yourself when you're not talking because it makes noises. The gunas are sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva is the principle of purity, of clarity, of non-activity, of stillness, wherein I have the clear, effortless knowledge of myself and what the world is. Rajas is the quality of mind of activity, where passion takes place, where achieving, acquiring, ambition, and all our ego drives are there. We have also all our suffering is in the rajasic state, where competition, jealousy, envy, low self-esteem, all those issues happen in the rajasic mind state. Tamas is the principle of inactivity, and its characteristic or quality is illusion and delusion. We do not see things as they are, and we superimpose false ideas on things. And as a result, the life gets dark, depressed, covered. So he's going to use these three gunas as the lens. So we're on the 18th verse. Will you help us out, please, Deepa?
Yeah,
Nice and loud so the whole room can hear you.
sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Can you guys?
Yeah.
All right.
Anishtam ishtam mishram cha trividham karmana phalam bhavatyattyaginam pretya natu samnyasinam kvachit. The threefold fruit of action, evil, good, and mixed, accrues after death only to those who have no spirit of abandonment, never to total relinquishers.
So we've had these two terms, sannyasa, which means renunciation, and tyagaha, which means to abandon things. I always think of this difference. Sannyas is when I make the choice, okay, I'm going to give this up. When I think of tyagaha, I always think of like children. So if you have a tricycle and you love your tricycle and you pedal around the driveway with it, and then eventually your folks get you the two-wheeled bike, what happens to your desire for the tricycle? Gone. Abandoned, left behind. So that's the slight difference between sannyas and tyaga. All understand it?
Mm-hmm.
So for people who have identification with an ego sense, meaning I think I'm a person, most specifically, I think I'm my body, or my body plus the personality, and I'm functioning in these three mind states where I'm attached to tamas. I want to get loaded. The goal in life is to not feel, not think. Good heroin, good fentanyl, good scotch. That's the solution to life. Or rajas, I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, more better different. Give me cash and prizes. I want to wipe out my enemies. I want to defeat people. I want to be at the top of the heap. Or people who then become attached to goodness, to sattva. I don't want to go outside because there's just awful people out there. I want to stay inside so I can meditate. No, I can't live in the city. The vibrations are too gross. I have to go up to the mountains. Unable and unwilling to move and function in the society. Then Gita contrasts that with the woman or the man of realization, who is vigunaihi, beyond the gunas. I am ever identified as the witnessing consciousness, whoever knows the play of the mind. Who's given up being attached or involved with. Swamiji always used to say, get out, not out of the satsang, get out of your mind. Get out of your mind. Quit believing you. So if we are identified and attached with the gunas, we will continue to be impelled into reincarnation. Now, you do not need to believe in the doctrine of reincarnation. We can say it from this standpoint. If we're attached or identified with one of the gunas, we will be impelled into seeking new environments. But that's what's going to make me okay. That's what's going to make me happy. Oh, Chicago, that's not where it's at. I need to move to Los Angeles. So that isn't doing it. If only I lived in India, that'll make it better. Or if you're Indians, oh, everybody's so poor. It's wait till I move to the United States. Keep wanting to change an environment in order to be happy. We can see the doctrine of reincarnation simply in the frame of one person's linear lifetime, if you choose. If you choose. But the Jivan Mukta, the liberated soul, is at peace wherever they are. Now, there's always a little bit of a trick here. At the point of realization, it's not that this individuality merges with Brahman or explodes and is no longer this, that, or the other thing. What the subtle intellect, the buddhi, realizes, oh, I was never really born in the first place. I'm not a person. Meaning, when we have done enough spiritual work, we've attained to what we call Shuddha Chitta, purity of mind. We've reduced the frequency and the volume of thought to the point where we can begin to see space between the thoughts. Then we have what I call the radical reversal of the attentive faculty. We quit paying attention to the knowable, gross things, objects in the world, the body itself, subtle things, feelings, thoughts, impressions, memories. Instead, who am I? Koha. Now, one of the words the scriptures use for the ego is chit-chaya. Chaya in Sanskrit means shadow or reflection. It's a phony self. It's a counterfeit self. It's a shadow self. So if there's a light and there's a person or an object shining on it, it makes the shadow appear. What happens though if you shine a light on a shadow? It's gone. So what happens when we introvert the attentive faculty and we go looking for I, thinking I'm going to find a person? We have to do very subtle discrimination. If it can be described, if it is a form, if it is a quality, if it is a characteristic, it's actually part of either the physical body, the mind, or the intellect. Let that go. Keep inquiring into what's my essential nature? Who am I? What we find is in this space between our thoughts, with the attention introverted, there's nothing there. This false I, this jiva bhavana, this feeling that I'm a person, something is there. And you won't see it as an object because you're the one doing the looking. You are there. That witnessing consciousness was never in the body. Easiest way to explain this. If you have a dream, I had a dream last night and I was on a sailboat and I was down in Los Angeles sailing to Catalina and the waves were beautiful and the sun on the sea and stuff like that. So the dream body with the dream ego that peeped out of that dream body could see the dream sailboat, see my brother helping me sail the boat, see the water, see the waves, see the sky. All of that was inside my mind. Did I incarnate into a dream? No. I am not in the dream. The dream is in me. Vedanta thunders. Krishna has said it in the 11th chapter. I am not in them. They are in me. And they're not really in me. If I dream about a horse, I don't wake up in the morning with a horse in bed with me. It wasn't real. Meaning, this sense of individuality is deeply ingrained belief that I'm a person. Mainly, I think I'm my body.
Jim,
Yes,
is this a good time for a question?
certainly.
Should we pay attention to our dreams or should we just kind of ignore them? Like, is there any meaning or sort of value in our dreams?
Yes and no. If you are working with a psychologist who's perhaps a Jungian, a Jungian psychologist, someone who's been trained in the school of Carl Jung, or you're the mental health professional. I suppose there's other schools that do this too. But basically what you find is every element in your dream is basically a quality of your own psyche. So through looking at your dreams, it is a way to begin to find out what your unconscious is doing. Do you have anything to add on that? After a while, though, what we begin to see, what yoga says about dreams, is they are the undigested impressions of the waking state. So you took a plane from Los Angeles to San Francisco, and then the next day you were on a cable car. So you have a dream that you're in a flying cable car. See, so it can just be these undigested impressions. What you will find if you meditate, first of all, you will sleep deeper, you will need less sleep, and you won't have these stressful kinds of dreams nearly as much. Because these things will get worked out in a more conscious way in the meditative state. But listen very carefully. Nobody gets enlightened in a dream. Because one of the factors of the dream is the idea of real conscious volition is incredibly reduced. For most of us, the dream state has a very passive quality to it. And then this happened, and then that happened, and then so and so showed up. You don't have the kind of choice that you have in the waking state. So the yogis, unless you want to get siddhis, and learn how to astral project and travel in your dreams to other places and stuff like that, but that won't free you. It's like building big muscles. That's all that is. We do have what I call big dreams. So big dreams have a quality like most men, for example, dream in black and white. Correct me if I've been taught wrong. Largely women will dream in color. Is that true?
My understanding, but I'm not an expert.
But sometimes men and women will have what are called big dreams. These are dreams that may be deep, deep teachings about your life. Or for those whose consciousness has been expanded, they can be intimations about archetypical events. I went to a bunch of presentations a few years ago on Carl Jung's Red Book. This is kind of a journal that he kept prior to the Second World War. And it's like he was able to intuit all the horrors and suffering that was going to happen. And it wasn't personal to him. It was a societal event that he was tuning into. And he just didn't judge it. He just journaled about it, wrote pictures and stuff like that. Sometimes we're given those kinds of dreams. But for most of us, very rarely. Some of us will have a dream where our guru will show up. Is that just a part of my unconscious, or has Swamiji come to teach me in my dream? I don't care. I just like it when he does. But it's not an integral part of doing your yoga. You do your yoga in the waking state. Very good question. Was that useful?
Yeah, very. Thank you.
Anybody else on that?
Some people can control their dream a bit more. Does that
Anybody can do it if you practice it.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm asking is, if that in that state, is that part of yoga, if you can be in that state?
In the Raja Yoga tradition, the practitioners develop what we call siddhis, which are psychic powers. The ability to control your dreams, and actually the body you run around in your dream state is called your subtle body. And those who have tremendous control over it, they can actually go to distant locations and see what's going on. But it's like going to the gym. You know, you look on YouTube and you see some gal with great big huge muscles. All it is she's worked out a lot. So siddhis in and of themselves are no indicator of spiritual attainment. That's the thing to understand. It's just to understand that the human mind has far more capacity than most of us think. And the yogis of India and of Tibet have been exploring this for thousands of years. Did that answer your question?
Mhm.
And every scripture that deals with these siddhis, after they teach you how to do such and such and so and so, they say, and this is not what it's really about. Go for knowledge.
So a siddhi is a psychic.
Siddhi means power, an accomplishment, really. Psychic powers is what they are. How do we get on that?
So they read your thoughts.
Some people do. Actually, it is my opinion. We are all psychic. We can all read one another's, at least their emotional states. But what happens? A child feels mommy's upset and says, Mommy, what's wrong? And mommy says, nothing, dear, eat your applesauce. Meaning mommy lied. So the child starts to disconnect from her intuition. And we shut down those qualities. Then as we get older, the cocoon of egoism gets harder and harder, like it's like a carapace. And we need to, then if we choose to want to be sensitive, we have to learn to undo. Let me give you an example. Yeah, we have a mental health professional here, which I'm very happy for. If I pick on you, tell me to stop.
It's fine.
Would you please explain to us what transference and countertransference are in the clinical environment?
Sure. So transference are a set of assumptions or ideas that one has about a person.
We got a distraction. Say again.
So it's a set of assumptions or feelings or attributes that we think of our therapists. We think, oh, they're smart and we fill in all the gaps, right? They have this kind of life, and we think they must have had a good background. They must have had a nice family. We have this idea, this picture of, based in some on how they treat us, but also on these ideas, these projections. And so we transfer. So often we fall in love with our therapists, right? Or we have these ideas of them. So the countertransference is the feelings that the therapist can have towards patients or clients. And so they can be positive and they can be not so positive, but being aware of how much of that is about my own self and not about them. And same with transference, that it's often a projection of things.
And the thing that can be useful in a clinical environment, if you're really empty, you can use the countertransference as it were a diagnostic tool to see what's going on. Let me give you a real life example. So when I've been involved in, say, a 12-step meeting, I learned this years ago. There'll be somebody there, and all of a sudden I feel this sexual attraction to them. And I've learned, I just step back and I look at that. And then I realized, oh, they're just broadcasting sexual energy. Almost without exception, as they begin to share, I find out they're either victims of childhood sexual abuse, or they were sexualized very early. And my attraction to them is countertransference. It really isn't my stuff, but I felt like it was my stuff.
So they're transferring to you.
They're transferring to me and I'm transferring to
Okay.
them. This thing is happening. But if you're detached, you can watch that and you can begin to see what's going on. So my point being, if you pay attention to your own subtle body, you can begin to discriminate when sometimes the feelings we have are not ours. They're things we're tuning into in other people. Couples will oftentimes find this. You know, all of a sudden you'll be agitated and irritated, and all of a sudden you realize, no, that's my partner who's doing that. Any of you have who've been in a relationship seen that happen? You know, it's hard to tell if it's mine or theirs sometimes. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the point is, you're already psychic. You just have to pay attention. And what happens is ego wants to go, mine, it's all about me, and it's my problem, and they're doing something to me, and I feel this, you know, and what's going, you know, it's all about me. And if you just can become neutral, in the end, we find we have no thoughts and feelings of our own. There's just mind that kind of gets passed around. Doesn't really belong to anyone. Oh, this I got from my family of origin. I picked this up from my mother or my father. Where did they get it? To whom does it really belong? It's just a syndrome. The yogi just gets out of it. But anyway, my point being, the more you meditate and the emptier you become, the more sensitive you can be to the thoughts and feelings of others. For example, who here has ever had the experience? You're just sitting, you know, by yourself, having a cup of coffee in the morning, maybe reading the paper or going through, you know, your YouTube stuff, and someone will pop into your mind. And you follow your intuition, you pick them up and you call, pick up the phone and call. Oh, I'm so glad that you called. Blah, 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 blah. Who's had an experience like that? Do I have any hands at all?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. How did you know it? How did you know it? So all the psychic does is, first of all, from a young age, they don't shut this down. And they have a greater gift. But my point is, these are natural parts of the human mind. Now, the other thing is, basically, our minds are all the same. When you know your own mind, you know everybody else's. You know what your particular, the word we have is klesha, your afflictions. Fearful or selfish, full of lust, full of greed, self-centered in the extreme, have control issues, may not always happen. That's the human mind.
Hey, Jim.
Go ahead.
So are you saying there's no chance occurrences or chance thoughts?
No, there are no chance thoughts. All of them have an origin and a cause somewhere.
Actually, I had a similar question.
But let me finish my thought. Also, the good stuff is there. you're kind and you're generous and you're selfless and you're giving and you're loving, within you is the whole range of the human experience. When you move out of denial about your own shadow nature, I keep using Jungian stuff, you get to know your own dark side. And you're at peace with it, then you first of all are not nearly as reactive to the dark side of other people. But you can feel what's going on with people without judgment. Without judgment. Now, what was the question on Zoom? Who is it, by the way? Can't see who it is.
Oh, it's a Santosh.
Santosh, Hari Om Maharaj.
Hari Om.
Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay. What was your question?
No, that was it. Was if there were any chance thoughts or chance feelings?
No, they all have a cause someplace. They either come out of our own karmic stream or there's stuff we tune into in the environment. They all have a cause someplace. Some experience has happened, and when the situation is conducive, the mind is happy. When the situation is non-conducive, the mind is unhappy, and it leaves an impression.
So what happens if you just keep following the series of causes?
But
You have to ultimately go somewhere.
It's endless. Gita will use the metaphor of the Ashwatha tree earlier on, the tree of life that's upside down, whose roots are above and its branches are below. Once you keep following the cause of everything in this life, then you've got your previous lives. There's, in the end, causation hunting is futile. And you don't need to. In the now, you have the sum total of all the material. It's just right here. So if you have a feeling, let's say a negative feeling, let's say you wake up and you feel sad. You can try, why am I sad? That may or may not be the cause. That's the thing that always gets me. But the point is, I'm sad. You tell the truth about it. You stay present to that experience, knowing I'm not my mind, I'm not the sadness. I don't need to fix it. If I'm present to it, I'm not managing, it can't last, because no form in this world is permanent. This is the major thing we learn on a meditation retreat. Who here has been like on a Vipassana retreat? So what happens when feelings come up on a Vipassana retreat? What you?
Nothing. They just go away.
You
after
just
some time.
observe them.
Yeah. And the suggestion is, why don't you do that for the rest of your life? Was that useful, Santosh? I guess so. All right. got
Sorry, it
those.
was on mute. Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
Okay. Next verse.
Here in verse 13. Panchaitani mahabaho karanani nibodha me samkhye kritante proktani siddhaye sarva karmanam. Learn from me, O mighty armed, these 5 causes for the accomplishment of all actions, as declared in the Sankhya system, which is the end of all actions.
So again, Gita uses the language of the Sankhya philosophy, although it takes it to another level. So now he's going to go into the 5-fold cause of all action, whether it be tamasic, rajasic, or sattvic. Going on. Hindus love to make lists, by the way, if you haven't figured this out.
Adhishthanam tatha karta, karanam cha prithagvidam, vividhascha prithak cheshta, daivam chaivatra panchamam. The seat or the body, the doer or the ego, the various organs of perception, the different functions of various organs of action, and also the presiding deity, the fifth.
All right, so these are the elements. Let's take them one by one and discuss them. What was the first one, please, Deepa?
The seat or the body.
Yes. This is the seat of all action. The dharma of the body is karma. Karma just means action. A body without action is called the corpse. Even sitting still is an action. No one at the level of the body is ever freed from action. So your body will act. You come in with what we call prarabdha karma, the karma of this life, the karma of this body. You're going to go through your life getting your allotted doses of successes and failures, joys and sorrows. You're going to do what you're going to do. This is the dharma of the body itself. The first factor in this fivefold list. Next one.
The doer or the ego.
Karta, the doer. Amkriti. This is the factor in us that chooses. I decided to warm up my vegetable soup for lunch. I decided to listen to some Schubert music today. I decided to prepare for class tonight. I decided to call my little brother. That I is a function in the subtlest part of the intellect called the Vijnana Maya Kosha. Now, listen carefully. Some people think I'm going to beat up or destroy the ego. This karta, the word in Sanskrit, the other word we get is ahankriti or ahankara. Aham means I, kara means to make or to do. They're the kinds of thoughts that give this illusion of an individual. The thing that happens for the yogi is she knows I am not the ego. The ego can thicken and thin out. So I will frequently do this, like everybody look at Divya here. And let's see whether or not she spilled lunch on her blouse and whether she has, is her hair combed and stuff like that. Everybody look at Divya. How does that make you feel?
More conscious.
Hmm?
More conscious.
Self-conscious.
Yes.
Natural. But if you're engaged in a project, you're dancing, making love, listening to really, really engaging music, totally absorbed in a project at work, this ego sense thins until something in your environment draws your attention. How are you doing? So the way to not be afflicted is to see it for what it is. It's a function in the subtle intellect that coordinates all the data and memory. Any thoughts on this? Where it's problematic is when I think I'm my ego. Then when the ego gets threatened, I think I am threatened. There's the yogi is always seeing the ego change, rise, fall, thick and thin. Not particularly concerned about.
Jim, is it true that you need the ego to become enlightened anyway?
What is it that gets enlightened? Does the self get enlightened?
No.
Both bondage and liberation occur to the mind. Actually, technically, this vijnana maya kosha, the buddhi. The buddhi becomes buddha. The self is ever free. It's an excellent question. Excellent question. What is my bondage? My bondage is the deeply rooted conviction in this mind that I am the body, or the body plus the personality. There is no other liberation than the deeply rooted conviction in the mind, in the subtle intellect. Not that I'm a realized person, but that I am Brahman. Neither state affects yourself. Now, there's two kinds of knowledge that we're dealing with. This is a secret. There is a perfect knowledge. It's the only real knowledge with a big capital R. How do you know you are you? You do not see, hear, taste, touch, or smell yourself. That's just the body. You don't emote yourself. You're not a feeling. You don't think yourself. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. Maybe you should have tried meditation. Quit thinking and see if you disappear. Yet you know you are. How do you know you are you? What is the instrument for knowing the self? The instrument for knowing the self is the self itself. The self is Swayambhu, self-evident. Swayamjyoti, self-effulgent, self-luminous. Swayamtika, it indicates its own self. But the great cosmic joke is everybody already has that. So you go to a homeless person. How are you doing today? Oh, rough. I'm really having a hard time. By the way, do you exist? What a stupid question. Of course I exist. Do you know that you're having a hard time? Of course I know I had a hard time. I just told you that. What's going on with you? So in the midst of their misery, I shine. But in the subtle intellect, that person superimposes on that direct experience all the qualities of the body, mind. Now, if your mind gets very quiet, and you introvert that attentive faculty, notice who you are. See, there's no divya. There's just that vast empty space. Do you get a sense of that? Where'd divya go? You bring back. But when the subtle intellect senses that, it goes, oh, I get it. There's nobody there. That didn't create yourself. You didn't become the self. You didn't merge into the self. You just noticed in your mind a direct, eternal fact. Let me give you a more worldly example. Bring your attention to the sensation of the waistband of your pants around your waist. Are they loose? Are they just right? Are they too tight? Now, two things are going on here. The first is the direct experience that your skin has, feeling the waistband. Now that's been going on since you put your pants on this morning. But you weren't paying attention to it probably until I brought your attention to it. So it was the subtle intellect, the attentive faculty. I said, yeah, my pants are just right today. But it isn't your mind that feels it, that's your skin. So you can reflect on a direct experience. Do you see that? Yes?
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens in the subtle intellect. The subtle intellect, the mind is incredibly quiet, investigates the direct, eternal, constant I-ing that's always going on.
Can you repeat that example one more time, Jim? The belt.
Okay, let me give you another one. Take your hands and rub your hands together. Direct experience. Now we're going to have a second process. When you rubbed your hands together, was it motion or stasis?
Motion.
Was it cool or warm? So two things happen. Direct experience, hand rubbing. The instrument for hand rubbing is hands. Then the mind reflected on that experience. You see that they're two different things. So the difference between the waistband and the hand rubbing is those are still worldly experiences. But selfing, I-ing, is going on all the time. It's you who sees the phone. I do. That's yourself. Now, the only problem is I've never bothered to really look. Who am I? What's my essential nature? In a quiet mind, the attention introverted. Look. And you find you're not a miserable creature. You're not a poor worm. You're also not a great and marvelous person. There's nothing there but the space of consciousness. Understand, I see the room from my viewpoint. Divya sees the room from hers. You out there in Zoom land do the same thing. I know my thoughts and feelings. You all know your thoughts and feelings. But when I look behind my eyes and notice the noticer, there's just this chid akasha, this space of pure awareness. It's empty. Shunyata. Yet it's purnam, it's full of me. And it never changes. And the self in me is not like the self in you. The self in me is the self in you. So it's not the self that undergoes any kind of change or process. The self and the I-ing of yourself is an eternal constant. But it's not the self that has the problem, it's my stupid mind. What's the problem of my mind? In my mind, I superimpose upon that experience all sorts of nonsense. From that comes all my suffering. Did that make it clear, Santosh?
Yep.
Jim, you can have a direct experience of the self in you, but how do you have a direct experience that the self in you is the same as someone else?
Good question. Just keep meditating, and you will find that the world itself will start to thin out. And in the end, all that's here is the self. In Yoga Vasishta, we have 3 questions that we answer. Who am I? What is this world? How has it come about? So when we begin to see that all of the names and forms are just like a hologram, it's all in consciousness, these questions will be answered. And I know exactly how you feel because I got stuck there a long time.
Yep, I'm here for a long time.
And it just means there's still vasana. It means there's still, and again, we answer that first question, Kolham, who am I? And we think, well, maybe that's all as far as I need to go. I am that witnessing consciousness. But I bet that hasn't solved the problem of your suffering.
Mhm.
Because I still believe the world is real.
Mhm.
And therefore, I crave some things and I hate other things. I have attachment and aversion. And when I continue to see the world of name and form as separate and real, that's part of what keeps me from letting all this stuff just fall away. Just keep at it. Just keep at it. It's not figure outable, but it's directly experienced.
The body will still crave things though, right? It's just that at the as a witness, we realize it's just the body's craving. It's not.
Well, I mean, there are needs and then there are cravings. A lot of people, you know, I hear this around 12-step groups all the time. I'm not getting my needs met. You know, I want my partner to wear nail polish. I'm not getting my needs met. You know, I mean, we use that word to dress up desire. Now, of course, you have needs: food, clothing, and shelter. Your health, those are real needs at the level of the body. But with few exceptions, that's not what causes people to want to put a gun to their head. Did that make sense, Setu?
Yeah, I guess let's say take one level up from the body. Then the mind seems to have need. Oh, I feel good when someone says, "Wow, you know, you're my good friend," you know, and I feel like that's a need. Is that a need? No, I guess no.
No, it's a desire.
It's a desire, yeah.
Some people working in the psychological realm, when old-timey days, when I was studying this stuff, we had Maslow's pyramid. Do they even teach that anymore?
They do.
Yeah. And he called them, you know, various needs of various kinds. But yoga boils it all down to, of course, we have preferences, but our needs are quite minimal. All the rest is stuff that I want. And the problem is if I'm attached to it, it's going to make me suffer. Doesn't mean not to do it and enjoy it. Yoga is not nihilistic. For example, do you enjoy a sunset?
Not really, I guess, to be honest, 'cause I don't really try to see them, so.
Speaks then.
It feels weird to say that, but to be honest, like, the fact I don't really try, it means I don't.
Do you enjoy nature?
Yes, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Or
Do you take nature home and bring it into your apartment?
Feels tempting sometimes. Why am I living here? I should go live in the woods, you know, I see more trees all the time. Why am I living in the city? I guess I do have that feeling, to be honest, yeah, sometimes.
Well, and what Swami Tapovan said to Chinmaya, do you see that mountain? Yes. Isn't it beautiful? Yes. You can't possess a mountain. You can enjoy the world without the compulsion to possess it. Do you ever go to a museum?
Sometimes.
If you go to a museum and you see a gorgeous work of art, you don't need to take it off the wall and bring it home. So the yogi enjoys the world. There's nothing wrong with the world. Sarvam kalvidam Brahma. This world is verily Brahman. But the names and forms are like just vapor, pretty to look at, but they evaporate.
So the difference with the museum sunset example is we know we can't have the sunset as our possession, so we make peace with that. But in other things, yeah,
We
I can have a
think
partner
we-
who's gonna be so nice to me 24/7. So I crave it because I think I can have it. In the first case, we know we can't.
Anybody ever have a partner who's nice to them 24/7?
No. But somehow we fool ourselves to think that that's a possession that we could.
That's the point. The yogi understands the stupidity of that idea. Now just take that and apply it to the whole world. Now, I'm sure your spouse is nice to you sometimes.
Sure.
Yeah. So the world, it's a sine wave, up and down, and up and down. Swamiji loved to enjoy the world. He was completely unattached. He loved riding in fast cars. He loved good, spicy food. He loved watching tennis. I mean, when he would fly across the Atlantic, he'd fly first class and have a scotch and water. Swamiji's having a drink. And one. The world is not problematic. When we say sannyas, we do not mean avoid the world. You can't. You can't. The Hebrew psalmist says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. You think of Swami Tapovanam, he used to walk through the Himalayas. He loved the beauty of nature. That incredible renunciate inside. It's not about life negation. We have these two statements in the scriptures. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real. The phenomenal world is an illusion. And then we have Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this world is verily Brahman. We have to reconcile those. The illusion is the world of name and form is separate from consciousness. And those people, places, things, and conditions can give me real happiness. And those piss me off. The yogi understands, even when I'm enjoying the world, it's only a taste of my self-nature. Desire, object of desire, that come together. Krishna. It's myself. It's myself. Everywhere I look. It's myself. Was that helpful?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Yeah, it's good.
We've gone through 17 chapters, hardly any questions. Now we're getting all the questions in the last one. I love it.
Last chance.
Yeah, we'll start. Yeah, we'll start.
Jim, this is Smitha. I have a question about physical suffering and
Yes.
how much of this is a very poorly formed question. It's more of a thought. How does physical suffering play into all of this and our relationship with our egos and our bodies?
It's a good question. Many people, when they read the yoga scriptures, they get caught up in what I call flesh hating. Nasty old body. Let me see if I can free the spirit by beating up the body. That doesn't work. The Buddha said it doesn't work. Yoga says it doesn't work. You want to treat your body like a car. You know you're not your car, but if you don't change the oil and you don't get new tires and you don't make sure they're inflated, what's going to happen to your car? It's going to break down and will no longer serve you. So what you want to do is treat your body. Ultimately, it's a vehicle for realization of the infinite. Keep it clean, keep it healthy. Don't deliberately uglify it. That's not good yoga. Don't spend 45 minutes in the morning, putting on your makeup to make everybody think you're gorgeous. Dress appropriately for your station in life and the job that you have. Out of compassion for the rest of us, take a shower. So health is the greatest of all wealth. And the paradox is we don't know how valuable it is until we lose it. Ask anyone who's got chronic pain. Very difficult to do sadhana. Now, if you are already a yogi and you have some of these tools, when physical suffering comes, because I promise you, with very few exceptions, you gotta die of something. And it usually hurts. You can have some acceptance, have some detachment. And the solution isn't always taking pain meds. Schools of psychological medicine and stuff like that, where people learn to deal with chronic pain with either no medication or minimal medication, because they don't want to be loaded all the time. So if you're a yogi, you have a better chance of dealing with your suffering. So it happens. And there are great yogis, people like Ramana Maharshi, who had cancer, who's at peace all the way on through it. Nisargadatta Maharaj had throat cancer. The very last book that he did talks about his journey as a man of realization with throat cancer. I have no idea if he took pain meds. It's not mentioned. I kind of doubt it. But few of us have our deep psychological existential suffering because of physical pain. Some of us do. But most of us are unhappy because of people, because of situations, because of my ideas of what I think I should be or shouldn't be. Did that help?
Yeah, I think, yes, yes.
All right, next verse. Oh dear, it's 8 o'clock. We'll stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Now I can hang out for a while. Those of you who need to go and log off, please feel free. But if people want to hang out either here or on Zoom for a bit, have questions and stuff, I'm more than happy to hang out a bit.
Jim, I'm going to take your leave, so I'll make you host so that when you hang up, everyone gets hung up on. Okay? Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Jim, I have one question.
Please.
So I guess the way I think about it from what we're all learning is like, if you can enjoy something, you should try, I guess, right? Like suppose something nice comes along, try to enjoy it if you can. And then when you can't, then you sort of reflect on how real is that thing anyways, that is it really even real? And maybe you reflect on through your meditation, and lets you reduce the pain of the inevitable pain of not getting what your desires are.
What
Is that an accurate summary? Would you say it, or would you say it
I would suggest that we go back to the first thing I teach in the art of meditation class. And could we get a couple people to bring the coffee table in when we get all the chairs done?
Yeah.
I'm going to move this out of the way. So the first and most important meditation is to understand the pleasure principle. Those of us who studied Buddhism, the very first turning of the wheel of Dharma of the Buddha, his first teaching was the Four Noble Truths. Noble truth number one, life the way most of us live it sucks. Dukkha, the truth of suffering. Hari Om. Meaning, what does it feel like to want something you don't have? It hurts. What is the cause of my suffering? The cause of my suffering is I have craving, I have attachment, I have aversion. What do most of us do about that? I go out and get what I want. What I don't realize is that when desire and object of desire become one, it's not the object that's given me the pleasure. It's that momentary event where the mind is freed from jonesing. Do you see that, Setu?
I do see that, definitely.
So it's a taste of myself. So the assignment is, and you may have lost sight of this, own your suffering, own your ananda. When you're unhappy, you're not unhappy because the world isn't behaving. I'm unhappy because I'm stuck wanting.
Right. Makes sense.
That's all it ever is. And if you go through a reasonable period of time, 2-3 weeks, see if you can find any other kind of suffering.
Yeah.
That's not kama, that's not spritha, that's not raga or dvesha.
That's not possible.
Then own your bliss. When you do get what you want, happiness always tastes the same. You mean ice cream, a raise at work, the approval of my peers, etc. All that does the same thing to my mind? Yes. It varies in intensity and it varies in duration, but I get distracted by the various sensory experiences. What I want to do is pay attention to my mind. Oh, pizza. This makes me feel good. This stops my mind. The goodness is me.
Okay. Cool. Makes sense.
Someone's really nice to you. You hang out with your friends, you have a good time. Oh, that felt so good. It was so much fun. Oh, that's a taste of me. You have a wonderful, you're holding your wife in your arms and you feel so intimate and so comfortable. That's a taste of yourself. Now, are you meditating?
Mixed, yeah. So that's probably
The purpose of meditation, the purpose of satsang is when you can tune up the mind, you get the direct experience of objectless pleasure. Remember what we talk about, mediated happiness and non-mediated happiness?
Yes, yes.
Remember that?
Yes, definitely.
If all we ever get is the mediated happiness,
You don't know that.
you can have all the Vedanta in the world, but it goes right out the window. I want that because that's the only place I get my joy.
Right, right.
So the mind has to be retrained so that it understands that being freed from the jonesing, freed from the attachment, freed from the craving, when the mind can come home. That gives us this deep peace, this deep joy. And in meditation, you get the direct experience of objectless pleasure. And there's no shortcut. There's no shortcut.
Thanks, Jim. It's good summary.
Yeah. Jimmy, this is
Yes.
Sophie.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Jimmy. I wanted to ask, is this basically what you were saying when you were saying that people who meditate a lot stop seeing the difference between the external world and themselves is when they realize that all the experience just comes from within?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not like we are also the objects, because I know we are like all connected in living beings, but
You actually are the object, not you as an ego, but the self is all the objects.
and that's something that you also will realize if you meditate
Yes.
enough. Okay.
Vedanta is not solipsism. Solipsism is when you maintain the reality of your individual ego, and then you think, oh, everything out there is just a projection of my mind. There's no people out there anymore. You know, why am I angry at myself through my boss? You know, there's nothing out there but an extension of my mind. That's the philosophical position of solipsism. It's when you think the world of name and form is unreal, but you maintain the reality of your individuality. And Vedanta says, no, the individuality and the phenomenal world come about like a dream. So for example, if you have a pleasant dream or you have a nightmare, which dream is more real?
Both are equal.
And they're both unreal. But you don't realize it till you wake up. So we can say self-realization is waking up from being awake.
So when you realize that reality is also like the dream, it's all in you.
It's in consciousness.
It's in consciousness.
It's in you if you think of yourself as the infinite. It's not in you from an ego sense. Although certainly your perception of the world is to a large degree the projection of your mind.
And when you stop projecting from your mind, you just see things closer to reality, closer to this stream of consciousness.
It's like this. If you're driving through the desert and you see the road ahead flooded, and your perception is water and your knowledge is water, you go, oh my God, I've got to go around. But if you keep driving and you see the water moving into the distance, you realize it's a mirage. But it still looks like water. But your knowledge is heat waves off the sand. So the woman of realization sees the same world that you and I do, but she knows it for what it is. And therefore she's not fooled.
By the projections of the mind.
And by here, the projections of all of it.
Mhm.
In other words, if you get realized, the moon doesn't disappear. All the rest of us still see the moon. You as an individual don't create the moon.
Yeah.
But to a large degree, someone may think a particular woman is just the most horrible and ugly person in the world. Her children love her. So much of our experience of the world is incredibly colored by the projections of the mind. And that is individual and societal and family of origin and past lives.
Do the projections go away after realization?
You begin to see them for what they are. You quit taking yourself seriously.
Okay, thanks, Jimmy. Yeah.
Ramana Maharshi would use the example, the self is like the lamp in a projector, the mind is like the film, and the movie screen is like your experience of the world. Now, if you remove the mind, remove the film, what's on the screen? Just light. So the yogi starts with the assumption, what I'm seeing is my prejudices. And therefore you quit taking them so real. You don't take yourself seriously. You don't take anybody else too seriously either. Oh, Jim, how can you watch the news? Don't you get upset? Oh, it's just so awful what's going on. I just find it rather interesting and entertaining. It's a fascinating time to be in the world. Doesn't mean I don't have my particular viewpoint. I'm a bleeding heart liberal and proud of it. But that's just a stupid idea. I don't take it so seriously. It's just this one's view.
So Jim, I have a question about, I hear you, and I think the question about actions, even sometimes when you detach yourselves from something and you can, something happened and you look at it from that perspective of the observer, like that still to be compelled to take some action, where should that be coming from? Because isn't that, I think, where the clarity should be? Because if you see things as they are.
When we get back to studying chapters 3, 4, and 5, we'll go into this in depth. But for now, you can start with just try not to be an asshole. It's a real that alone goes a long way.
Yes, it does. On that note, I think we're going to leave. Jim.
Adios.
Thanks for class, Jim.
Great as always.
You're always welcome. I hope it's okay that I keep using
No,
you
it's
as a
fine.
resource.
Absolutely.
It helps so much.
Happy to.
Half the class has therapists, you know.
Right. Well, I think we should all have therapists. I do. Thank you.
Hi.
All right, any
Thank
other
you, Jen.
questions in Zoom land?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Jim.
Jimmy, I have two questions that are, I don't know if they follow the class necessarily, but I've been hearing this two concepts being thrown around about the principle of inaction and separately divine timing. And I've been trying to understand them, but I'm very confused by both.
It's a big issue. And again, be patient. We'll go into it. You know, you can get a copy of Gita and start reading chapters 3, 4, and 5 yourself. You know, I'm not the only source of scripture here.
Yeah, the Gita is quite difficult to read.
If you get Swamiji's commentary and translation, you'll find it is incredibly clear.
Okay.
And I have them here. They're $15, or you can get them online. It's called The Holy Gita. You've been here in classes, seen the big
Yes.
orange.
Yeah. Okay, I will try it. Yes, because I've been hearing those concepts and they're just like very difficult for me to wrap my head
They're
around.
difficult for all of us. But understand, you're such an ordinary yogi. They wrote a book about you 3,500 years ago. And
Yeah.
people with exactly the questions you have, you're right on target because it's covered in depth in chapters 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
So yours is an ordinary and a good question.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I will both be patient and try to read some on my own.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jimmy. I'm
All right.
gonna leave. Bye bye. Have a good
Hariom.
evening. Hariom.